Hello everyone, it's Michael Mechanical, and today I just want to quickly go over some thoughts and some expression of what's actually happened with the Triton and what's going on. So, we've had a chance to think about things and considered options of what has gone wrong, what's gone right, what's gone wrong. And obviously, I'm not going to let down the fact that I did make a mistake myself. That was, I didn't properly check the oil level in the car because it was on a slope, and that slope could have put all the oil to one side of the engine and it wouldn't have had a true reading. It would have been more accurate for me to bring it into the driveway on a flat level surface and then check the oil. So I feel like that's my mistake for not checking the oil properly on the weekend. So now this is a dead engine because I didn't do a proper oil check. Now, I've driven my mum around, I've driven my dad around in this car, and I wouldn't have expected it to have lost so much oil, and I had been trying really hard to financially get ahead and get into a position, but also not only that, but to get the parts I need to get this thing done, because I was expecting that this wouldn't have happened with that, and I might have been able to just push it enough to get it across the line that I can have this ready to go, just swap them out, and then that one is still reconditionable. I reckon it might still have some possibility of being reconditioned, but unless it comes out, we don't know the full extent of the damage. But considering multiple aspects of what's going right and wrong with this motor, I want to consider the fact that I didn't actually have a light come on in my dash to tell me that there was no oil pressure. For me, what it looked like was, it's still got oil pressure, hearing a weird noise, but there's no change to the oil pressure light. There was nothing to indicate that there was anything majorly going wrong. But from the opportunity to consider the possibility of what's actually gone wrong is that this engine already had blow-by. Now, the blow-by was still meant to be sucked back into the engine by, going through here, into the canister, going back in, and then that's what was meant to happen. But in this case and scenario, you see how there's oil that's come out here? I have a strong possibility that maybe the damage was done. There was so much compression that it filled the crankcase up with a lot of compression that it actually held the light switch in the off position. So it falsely read that there was oil pressure when it was essentially just compression that was doing it. There wasn't oil pressure, but it was, the combustion pressure that's in the crankcase taking it up, and it's adding to the light switch, telling it to stay off. There's still oil pressure. False reading. And I didn't know that. I couldn't have told because I didn't know, but after assessing it, that is a possibility on what's actually gone wrong here and what's actually happened. Okay, so the fact is, where am I at now? Well, I'm accepting the fact that I'm going to feel like I'm responsible for this in some ways, because I did check the oil on Saturday, Sunday to see how it was doing, and I still pushed this thing. I still kept going with it without maybe even adding the oil that I had left over. I mean, a little bit of oil could have gone a long way in protecting it from failing, but because of my negligence in this case and scenario, and I have to take accountability for it, it's now not going to drive. Another thing I'm going to point out is people might think that, this engine has a lot of oil leaking. Well, overnight, there's the oil on the ground. It hasn't been losing much at all. That's literally how much it's been losing from just sitting after driving it once. So while it has been losing oil, it hasn't been losing much. Now, I won't be able to show you Dad's oil leaks, but he loses a heck of a lot more oil than I do, and he has it built up where he normally parks, and the white one used to lose a lot more oil than mine, and yet we were still able to stay on top of it because we knew. Okay, so there's his oil there from a couple of days ago, even those droplets, and he parks all over the place. There's the droplets from my car, how much oil my car was dripping over a long period of time, like little bit. And my dad always said that my car doesn't lose much oil at all. It hasn't lost much oil, One other case and scenario where we do know where the oil went is when we took it on the highway, the Triton MJ on the highway, we could actually smell burning oil. So this was driving at 100 kilometers per hour to 110. We could literally smell it constantly. That constant smell of burning oil, or, you know, that smell that comes from the rings burning, or something burning at the rings. We could smell it. Now, I don't know why we smelt it, but that's what we were getting a hint of, that there's something wrong, yes. Now, people might think and look at me and be like, you know, you shouldn't do mechanics. I read one guy's comments that maybe mechanics isn't for me. The case in point is not necessarily true, because you got to understand the reasons why I've done what I've done. I needed a car, and I knew there was problems with this, and while I couldn't keep on top of everything, I knew how much it was going to cost to rebuild the engine properly initially. It's going to cost me $1,000 to $2,000. Now, if I had to rebuild this thing, I could have, but now I'm in a position where I don't have a job, and I'm also waiting on parts for another engine that's had thousands more spent on it. Not to mention, I just put $1,600 into my injection pump to have that reconditioned. I couldn't rebuild an injection pump even if I tried, because I'm going to make a mistake, because I don't have the experience, the tools, and I haven't been trained. That's a very highly specialized field that I feel like, while there's a possibility I could do it successfully, I feel like I should leave it to people who actually have experience to do that stuff. Because it does take a long time to do an injection pump if you don't know what you're doing. On the other hand, you know, let's look at this. I've done this almost right. I still have one of these caps the wrong way around. I have a broken stud that no longer is with me, because it's probably in the trash somewhere from a Sprint Auto Parts somewhere. And the broken studs, well, I've only got one left. I don't even know where the actual good one is anymore. But, yeah, the connecting rod studs, I don't feel I want to trust because of the failure. And I'm so tempted at the moment, just because in its current condition, this engine's actually locked up. I cannot turn this engine over, even if I tried to, even if I dropped that first piston there. That is because I'm guessing I made a mistake yet again, and I do constantly make mistakes, but I also double check my work. That is why when I do things, you know, I put something together and then I try to turn it over by hand, and if something goes wrong, you know you've done a mistake. But also to double check the way the numbers are facing. Look at this one. That one's the reversed direction to that one there. That one there is the direction that they're meant to be. This one and this one are in the wrong direction. The 9 is on, for some reason, is on this side when it's meant to be on that side. And I tried so hard to put this together perfectly, only to make it that mistake. To put 2 on the wrong way around, and then the whole engine locked up. And then when I went to put it together, the studs broke, and then I'm like, well, there's a lot riding on it, and it's just too scary to take the risks. That I don't want to take the risks. And I'm feeling, to be honest, I am actually feeling a little bit impatient. I'm feeling like pinching these studs here off of these pistons, connecting rods, and swapping them out with the ones that are in here. That's how I'm feeling at the moment, because I could do that. The problem with that is I'm taking yet again another risk, that I'm going to take second-hand parts, put them on another second-hand engine that's been really, really well reconditioned, not perfectly. Obviously there's some small things right and wrong with it, but taking second-hand old studs that could snap, put them into that thing, and then if I do put them in there and they do snap, then I'm in trouble. So it comes down to the fact that what do you want to do it right? I got new studs coming. They'll be here the middle of next week. And in the meantime, I can't do nothing to the block. There's nothing I can do there until those parts come. But there is, in the meantime, the chance for me to pull that engine out and get that ready, and maybe even do the engine bay while I'm waiting, and clean it up, sand it, paint it, whatever I want to do to it. And in the meantime, I've also got to pressure wash all these parts, because I want to make this as clean as I can. There's still some more residue in there, still some residue in here. But yeah, that's what I've got to do. Another thing I want to do is I want to buy another one of these, but the actual pressure cylinder unit, because this situation makes me not trust the light so much. And I know with some indicators, I'll be able to get some information on the oil gauge, and that should be compatible with the oil pressure sender units, because they are pretty much the same on the diesels, except I'm not sure if that gauge will actually work, because I'm not sure if it's compatible with that one, but it is the same as what's in my dad's V6 Pajero. That's compatible there, so it has to be compatible there as well. Another thing I might do is, instead of just going straight to that gauge, I might put a secondary gauge in that is an oil pressure gauge that tells me how many bar PSI is this thing running at, because that little gauge there isn't going to give me much, and I don't even know if it works. So that's going to be an interesting one. Let's see if it actually works. But if I can have the light and I can have the sender, I've got two indicators of anything going wrong oil-wise, and I can prevent it happening again in the future. If the pressure of the engine is just astronomically high, way too high, if it's high at startup, okay, I get it, I understand a little bit of why, but if it's like too high beyond a normal reading, if I can figure out what normal is for this engine, then I can say this is the operating range that it's normally operating in. If I have a compression issue like I had here, and it's astronomically high, then I can get an indicator before the switch is held on by false pressure. Because if the oil pressure gauge is at maximum, okay, and it's in this case and scenario where this happened, I could have prevented more major damage happening, but I had no sender, there was no information, and that's still got to be wired into the car. But I'm having a hard time trying to explain this a little bit. Essentially, if I got a false reading out of the switch, essentially if the gauge works from the get-go and it says, hey, this is normal, straight up is normal. If a little bit too low is normal at idle or whatever, 0 PSI at idle, I get that because my dad's does that. And then when I'm driving, if it's normal in the middle, cool. But if it ever is, abnormally high at idle, if it's ever abnormally high under load, I've got an indication that there's going to be something wrong in the engine. And it'll give me the heads up before something major goes wrong. That's if it can read correctly and quick enough. These gauges are a little bit slow because they're calibrated to, sort of give that smooth effect. Whereas if they are, responsive and give you the pressure straight away, instant, figures, that is what you really need and that's what you really want. But that only comes with the other gauges which are not electric, from what I'm aware of. I could be wrong. Maybe there is a way. But what I really want to achieve out of doing this engine swap now is I want to be able to get that one in and not worry about the other two for a while. Then, when I'm ready to, and when I feel like it, I want to tear this one down, maybe with professional, to figure out why did this happen, what actually went wrong to cause this, and where was the oil going? That is the real question. Where has all the oil gone? It wasn't leaking much, so was it actually consuming oil, and how can we actually see where it was going? Because I believe that it's the piston rings that the oil was bypassing at, and I did have a thicker oil in this engine, so I don't think it should have left as quickly as it did. It left quickly, and that doesn't make 100% sense to me, because I added 10%, like it says 20 I believe, or 50% of this. I put about, it looks like it's half, it feels like half the bottle. I put half of this, it feels like, in the engine, or at least, 1/4 of the bottle. I have no idea. It feels like half this bottle I put in my engine. So this heavy oil should have slowed down the rate at which the oil would have, burnt off or bypassed the rings, because it's a thick oil, right? So why was it able to pump out so much oil? The other case and scenario of where initially oil might have left, because around Christmas time, when I first put this engine in, about 1,000 kilometers ago, it still had the old oil in it. Now, it was still full, and the only thing I can think of that's different in this case and scenario to when it had the oil in there was that maybe some grit and grut got in the pistons and scored up the liners, potentially damaging the piston rings, and then it caused it to rapidly, get oil sucked into the engine, and then the engine consumed the oil that way. And it was running on, the grit and the sand or whatever was going into the engine. This is why when you build an engine, it's best to keep it clean and try to keep things always clean. I unfortunately didn't care about this engine when I pulled it out, that I didn't think to do it straight away. That when I did need to put it back in the car, I was like hoping to get it maybe to, middle of this year, but unfortunately I didn't get that far. So I got hit with 2 bad things in one day. But I won't worry about the second thing. That's okay. I'll figure it out later. But right now, I need to focus on getting back to work. This car, I might not be able to get done for a fortnight because I still got to wait for parts. And I still got to organise these things and I have little things in between to do. But I also do actually have to get back to work. I've actually got no choice. I have to get back to work. And, maybe I've made mistakes here. But I don't feel like it's the end of a career or even necessarily start. It could be the start of a career. Making one mistake gives you the reason to not try to make that mistake again. It gives you the knowledge that, taking shortcuts does, do these silly things. I don't want to make a mistake like this again just because of how it feels to not have your car. It feels good to be able to drive your own car, not someone else's, especially in the sense of family and people getting upset, like you're living so close to people and then they are like, you're abusing my car, and you're not. You're driving it normally, you're just driving it on high-speed roads and they don't like you driving it on high-speed roads. That's the only way to get to work sometimes, And while this car seems like I've made huge mistakes, yes, I've made a huge mistake, but the end result was always going to happen regardless of how well I could service it. I could have kept it going longer, but in the end, we knew for years and years and years that the rings and the liners were damaged in this engine from water. Water corroded the liners, potentially even corroded the rings. That is why this engine was not going to last, because it was already damaged, and that would have increased wear and tear and could have potentially eventually maybe snapped the ring. I'm expecting maybe there'll be scores in the liners, and that will give me an indication of what's actually gone wrong, but that could also be a false indicator. So there's lots of little things I can think about as much as I want, but unless I have an experienced set of eyes to, explain to me what has caused what's happened, I actually don't know. And unless I can identify and prove it to myself, I don't know. I can say as much as I like, but unless I can get to the bottom of it, I don't know. In the end, I might never know, even if I explore it. In a way, the way I look at this engine right now is, even though it's stuffed, it's an opportunity to build another one and to do it properly yet again, and to understand that this is why you don't try to take shortcuts. This is why, they say, put your car on a level surface. This is level enough, even though the front's in the ditch, in the dirt, and the back is on solid ground. This is actually level enough to get a true and accurate reading of the oil level in the engine. The engine oil is definitely below minimum. I took it up a hill at minimum, and it caused the issue to accelerate the wear and tear of the engine and destroy it. Look at the oil level. It's on minimum. The black spot is. And I know it's hard to see. Let me go over here and make it clearer. Engine oil level is on minimum, even below minimum. But that's the price I've paid. Okay. It had problems, and we tried to avoid things. So in a way, you can say that even though I've made a mistake, it's not actually as bad as it seems, because we were expecting something to eventually go wrong with this one, and I pushed it, and I didn't want to waste money on topping out with oil. I didn't even know it was low on oil because I didn't check it properly. And now I have regrets, but the reason we need to remember and acknowledge our regrets is so we don't do the same stupid thing in the future. If you think it's low on oil, add some oil until it's full. Move the car. If you're not going to put 100 litres in the thing. 1 or 2 litres would have done this good. It would have lasted a bit longer. But unfortunately, I had to make a stupid mistake. Other than that, I think it's fair less than say I've tried and I did really well to keep this thing going as long as I could. I knew it wasn't going to last much longer anyway. It's just as well I killed it, because in the end I learned something from the experience and it's taught me something. Instead of already having the experience and the knowledge to rigorously check your oil levels, your coolant levels, which is the reason I actually popped the hood on Saturday, Sunday. It wasn't because of the oil. I checked the oil anyway, but I was like, it's got oil in it. I actually was checking it because of coolant. And I rigorously was checking my coolant levels. That's why there's white spots there. That is the reason I opened the hood in the first place, to check everything. So, I made a mistake. I didn't judge the oil correctly, and I didn't realize my mistake until it was too late. So, the lesson I will probably learn and have held on for a long time in the future is the future me is not going to make the same dumb, stupid mistake. If I think the oil level is low, I'm going to add oil. And if I find out that I've overtopped it, then I'm going to pull oil out and then put oil back in to get it to the maximum. A little bit over is okay, but a little bit under, it's scary, because then you don't know how long that oil is going to last. But anyway, thank you very much for your understanding, guys. I hope you understand why I don't feel like it's the end of a career, and I don't feel like, mechanics isn't for me. Because mechanics could be for me. Maybe I just haven't been exposed to the right atmosphere for doing it, and maybe I just don't have access to the modern distribution thing that makes it so I can smoothly get the parts I need. Maybe it's because I don't have enough income to fix things quick enough, because the quicker you can fix things, the more satisfaction you get that you're actually achieving something. Whereas if it takes you months and months and months, because you have to save money to buy things, to save money to buy things, and then that's when it isn't satisfying. Until you've actually achieved something really cool. So thank you very much, everyone. Michael the Mechanical, out.